Welcome. Today we're joined by Ara Vassilian, the Armenian General Benevolent Union, or AGBU Director of Schools in Lebanon. Recently, the AGBU conducted a fundraiser in Lebanon, which raised around $2 million. We'll be discussing this and other topics. Ara, thank you very much for your time.
Welcome, thank you. Hi, Emilio.
So what is the current situation like for the Armenian community in Lebanon? We know that the Armenian neighborhood of Burj Hammoud is not far from the port, which was the epicenter of the blast. Can you speak a bit about this?
As you probably saw on different news outlets, the massive explosion in Beirut tore through thousands of homes, sweeping everything on its path. The extent of the damage is absolutely devastating and hard to believe. Buildings are peeled off, the streets are filled with blood, debris, and blood. In the affected zone, you move through the houses, you discover that almost everyone is in bandages. The shockwave resulting from the explosion has displaced doors and windows by their frames, even in areas that are relatively far from the site. Some buildings are damaged beyond repair and need to be torn down. Others still stand, but the apartments now lack walls, windows, or doors. Hospitals are overwhelmed, and in many cases, the wounded have had to move on foot from one hospital to the other, trying to receive the needed medical attention. The devastating explosion has killed at least 220 people, wounding more than 6,000 and leaving approximately 300,000 people homeless. Search and rescue operations are ongoing, with at least 20 people still reported missing. According to some reports, at least 8,000 buildings, many concentrated in the historic quarters of the city, are affected. Unfortunately, many of these residences belong to Lebanese Armenians, since the community is concentrated in the area next to the port where the explosion took place. Historically, in the aftermath of the Armenian genocide, the Armenian population escaping the massacres found refuge in that particular port area. And the first Armenian refugee camps were established in the neighborhoods of El Badawi, Jemmeize, Nor Hajan, Manukhail, Burj Hammoud, Karantina, and Ashrafiyi. Slowly, tents were replaced by wooden structures, then with buildings. Over the years, even though some community members chose to leave the area and move to the suburbs like Zal'a or Antilias, the core stayed there and continued to thrive with community centers and churches. At the immediate vicinity of the explosion site, we have more than a dozen churches, community centers, and dispensaries that have served the community through thick and thin, through wars and economic hardship. Obviously, the Armenian community hit hard. According to the Armenian Foreign Ministry, sadly, 13 Armenians have passed away and more than 250 have been injured. The resulting trauma and pain is unbearable, as many people have lost their loved ones, mother, a father, a son, a daughter, a brother, or a sister. Those who have escaped with injuries consider themselves lucky. Everywhere you go, people will tell you that they thought their own house was being hit and how they managed to escape under the rubble and help others, despite their own injuries. Many families have lost their houses and businesses. In many cases, the house itself stands, but it is expensive and very costly to repair. Community centers, clubs, churches, primary healthcare centers, dispensaries, schools have been extensively damaged. In some cases, all windows are shattered and doors are dislodged. At the AGBU AYA basketball field, the ceiling glass panels off and resulted in serious injuries. Elsewhere, in other community centers, false ceilings were displaced and furniture, walls, medical equipment, computers, and projectors were severely damaged.
Can you speak a bit about the fundraiser that took place that raised $2 million that was done by the AGBU? How did the AGBU manage to conduct this fundraiser, and what will the funds be spent on exactly?
In the direct aftermath of the explosion, the AGBU dispensaries in Burj Hammoud and Khalil Badawi, despite sustaining heavy damage themselves, took care of the injured, providing the needed medical care and even performing minor surgeries and operations. Later, the AGBU AYA scouts joined the effort, formed small groups, and helped with the cleanup, debris removal, and restoration of households in the affected areas. Very quickly, the AGBU Lebanon Committee put together a disaster response unit, which took upon itself the responsibility of raising funds and supporting community members hit by the explosion. It devised plans to provide temporary housing to community members who had lost their residences. It also called the volunteers to join the effort, and based on this call, in a well-coordinated effort, hundreds, including teachers of the AGBU schools, students, alumni, veteran members, university students, young professionals, scouts, community members visited houses and buildings in the damaged zone, took surveys in preparation of the restoration efforts. At the same time, the Youth Center Board appealed to Armenians worldwide to contribute to the relief efforts for Lebanese Armenians. Thanks to the immediate and generous donation of our benefactors, over $1 million were raised, which was then doubled by a matching contribution from Mr. and Mrs. Vassilian and Tamar Manukyan, with the additional commitment to match all subsequent funds generated in the coming weeks to this urgent effort. This campaign and contributions are ongoing as we speak, and we are grateful to the aid community worldwide for being by our side during this time of crisis. The collected funds will be used to help renovate households and support families in dire need of financial assistance.
Apart from this fundraiser, what other initiatives is the AGBU involved in Beirut with regards to the aftermath of this explosion and in general with regards to the community in Lebanon?
As always, during the past academic year, AGBU Lebanon supported and supported schools, providing financial aid and scholarships to hundreds of students. The need for financial assistance was particularly obvious this year, as a large number of parents were unable to make tuition payments. AGBU provided the needed assistance to these families, and I'm confident that it will continue to do so in the upcoming days. Also, in response to the economic crisis sweeping through the country, around 9 months ago, AGBU Lebanon began a monthly food distribution initiative, and thanks to the generous contribution of Mr. and Mrs. Chan Tamar Manukyan, it now distributes boxes containing milk for babies and essential food items to sustain a family of 4 for an entire month to around 900 families. In the days following the explosion, AGBU Lebanon established a task force, created various subcommittees with targeted responsibilities, and mobilized hundreds of volunteers. The task force and the resulting disaster response unit organized volunteer visits to Armenian houses affected area and surveyed the resulting damage to plan and prepare for the renovation phase. The AGBU AYA immediately partnered with DAFA, a non-profit organization established by the recently resigned Lebanese MP Paula Yakubian, to distribute food, clothes, and to help with the cleaning of debris and glass throughout the streets of Beirut. Our scouts also partnered with Myrique Restaurant and the World Central Kitchen, preparing and offering food to the affected population in 2 different centers. In addition, just today, AGBU Lebanon kickstarted its psychological unit for kids, which will provide free consultations and support to help children come to terms with the trauma caused by the explosion.
Recently, the High Commissioner for Diaspora Affairs, Zare Sinanyan, said during his visit to Beirut that any Lebanese Armenians that wish to move to Armenia are welcome to do so. Is repatriation perhaps a better approach? What do you think about this?
Mr. Sinanyan was in Beirut during the past week. He held several meetings with community leaders and participated firsthand with the AGBU Disaster Response Unit in the restoration and rescue activities. He saw the devastation in Armenian households, churches, and community centers. I cannot speak for him. I believe he has a good assessment of the situation on the ground and that he should be asked about the Armenian government's stance on repatriation. We hope and pray for better days, but as AGBU, whether in Armenia or anywhere else in the diaspora, we stay true to our mission and continue our efforts to preserve and promote the Armenian language, culture, and heritage. We continue to serve our communities through various humanitarian and educational initiatives, especially under these trying times and difficult circumstances. Our job is to comfort, provide aid, give hope, and offer a helping hand to those in need, as we have done during the past 114 years. In doing so, we have our benefactors and sponsors, as well as our wonderful staff and volunteers to thank for their hard work, and dedication. Thanks to this support, in the spirit of the AGBU motto, unity in strength, together we will overcome difficulties, we will survive, we will recover, and we will rebuild our community.
There is reportedly a school in Lebanon that received $12 million, an Armenian school, but its attendance dropped by 50%. Do you think that financial support may be secondary to having a successful initiative?
We need to understand that the needs of the community go beyond the physical damage caused by the explosion itself. As you probably know, during the past year, Lebanon witnessed an economic meltdown marked by currency depreciation and issues with the once thriving bank sector. Due to these economic difficulties, in addition to the ongoing civil unrest, political crisis, and most recently to the COVID-19 pandemic, the services sector collapsed, and now, according to some estimates, the unemployment rate is at 35%, which means that 1 in every 3 Lebanese adults does not have a job to provide for his or her family. Being in direct contact with parents at our school, I can attest that many have lost their jobs and businesses. Others are being paid half salaries or are struggling just to get by. On top of all this, prices of everyday items have skyrocketed while individual income has declined significantly. Today, due to the explosion, some of these families have even lost the roof above their heads. They have no means to rebuild, much less pay tuition for their children. Therefore, aid directed to schools, regardless of the number of students, is absolutely vital to the survival of these families. Let me share my personal perspective on the subject. Consider a remote village in Armenia, say with 10 students and 1 school. Would you say that this village does not need a school and we should close it? We should shut it down due to the enrollment numbers? It's the same situation in the diaspora. We consider ourselves an extension of the Armenian population, and our children deserve our schools. That's why aid, be it from the Armenian government, benefactors or organizations, is essential to support these schools, help the parents in this time of need, and sustain the community. I'm sure that our organizations, the church, the AGBU, and others will do the impossible to preserve these gems we call our schools. They are the pillars of our existence, and the sustainability of our community depends on their survival and development.
Mr. Vassilian, thank you for your time, and we are all wishing you the best.
Thank you, Emilio. I hope to be with you again in better circumstances and better times.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us on CivilNet.